You're just a failure, my dad growled, slamming his wine glass down so hard it cracked. You'll never amount to anything. You couldn't even hold a stable job for more than 6 months. Silence fell like a blade over the dining room table. Forks hovered in midair. My cousin Jessica looked away, trying to hide a smirk. Uncle Bill stifled a laugh and muttered something under his breath. My older brother Tyler leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, proud like he'd just won a round of poker. My mom? She didn't even blink. She just kept cutting her steak. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. It wasn't the words that hurt the most. It was the approval, silent or spoken, from every face I once believed loved me.
Dad wasn't done.
You walked away from the family business like you had a plan. Where has that gotten you? Delivering groceries? Freelancing design gigs like some art school dropout? He stood up now, towering over me. You're a disgrace to this family. And you walk in here wearing that. He sneered at my plain black dress and flat shoes like I'd committed a crime. You used to be my daughter. Now you're just some joke. Laughter erupted. Jessica couldn't hold it anymore. Even Aunt Rachel leaned over and whispered something that made her snort wine through her nose. And no one said a word to stop them. I looked around the long oak table, hands shaking slightly under the cloth napkin on my lap. I could have screamed. I could have thrown the wine back in his face. I could have broken down. Instead, I smiled. Not bitterly. Not fakely.
Just calm.
Measured. I stood up, slowly, brushing invisible crumbs off my dress. Okay, I said, with a soft nod. That's all. And I walked out the front door, without saying goodbye. That night, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. My heart felt like a burned-out shell, raw from all the silent judgments and shouted insults. But there's something powerful that happens when pain has nowhere left to go. It starts turning into fire. Not fire that destroys. Fire that builds. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. Because at 3:44 a.m., I got a message from Alex on my private line. Then 2 more from Rachel and Dominic. All 3 read the same. We're ready. By 8:30 a.m. the next morning, 5 black limousines pulled up one by one to the same driveway I walked out of the night before, the one attached to the sprawling brick McMansion my father loved to show off like a prize dog. Inside, they were probably still eating their smug little breakfast. Pancakes with strawberries. Mom always used strawberries the morning after a dramatic fight. But this time, drama wasn't on the menu. Power was. The neighbors peeked out through their blinds as the drivers opened doors in unison. Out stepped 5 men and women in tailored suits, people who didn't just own companies. They owned industries. Alex Gray, tech CEO, estimated net worth, $4.1 billion. Dominic Weaver, private aerospace mogul, net worth, $3.8 billion. Rachel Lynn, venture capital queen, net worth, $2.2 billion. Miles Bennett and Sienna Carter, real estate, fintech, and half the downtown skyline. All of them walked up the stone steps, faces calm but stern. One of them pressed the doorbell. Inside, my dad opened the door still wearing his robe, confused. Can I help? Good morning, boss, Alex said, nodding toward me as I stepped out from behind them in a tailored black pantsuit. My heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as I walked past my dad, who stood frozen in the entryway. His lips parted. What the hell is this? Jessica peeked over his shoulder, face paling. I smiled again. This time, not soft. This time, sharp. Didn't anyone tell you? I said coolly. I acquired full controlling shares of Northbridge Ventures last week. His face contorted. You what?
I own it now.
The entire company you said I wasn't good enough to touch. And so do they, I added, gesturing to the billionaires behind me. Together, we run a portfolio worth more than this entire neighborhood. Silence. Then I walked into the living room like it was mine.
Because now it was.
The silence in the house after I walked in with those 5 titans behind me was thicker than wet cement. I looked around, slowly. Everything was exactly how I remembered. The stale scent of expensive candles, the obnoxious chandelier above the table where I'd been humiliated just 12 hours ago, and the same family members who laughed at me with steak knives in their hands, now sitting like ghosts mid-meal. Only now, the knives were metaphorical. And I held every single one of them. You're lying. My father finally croaked out. His voice cracked like dry wood. I turned, locked eyes with him, and reached into my bag. I pulled out a pristine manila folder and handed it to him. These are the acquisition documents. Dated. Notarized. Effective 7 a.m. this morning. He stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. But Tyler, my brother, snatched them out of his hand, scanning the contents. He was always the clever one, always the one destined to inherit Dad's empire. His jaw locked. She's not lying, he muttered. This is real. She owns Northbridge. And not just that, these names on the back, that's half the city's private sector. My aunt let out a choking noise. Someone dropped a fork. But my mom? She finally blinked. You bought it, she asked, voice dull like she was trying to compute a glitch in the universe.
How?
Simple, I said. While you were all busy mocking my so-called freelance gigs and failed ventures, I was founding Lyratech, a software security startup. Maybe you didn't notice, but a few months ago, it got acquired for $410 million. Most of it stock, the rest liquid. I paused, letting it sink in. Then I did what you all never thought I could. I reinvested, played my cards slow, pulled key partners from under your nose, and bought the very company you built your identity on. My dad's face looked like it had been carved out of ash. You think owning something makes you powerful? He barked, recovering his edge, stepping forward like a wounded lion. You think this gives you respect? No, I said gently. My silence last night did. He flinched. I could have shouted. I could have begged. But I knew who I was. And I didn't need your approval anymore. I let you think I was a failure because sometimes it's better to let people walk into their own humiliation. Tyler stood now too, but not out of pride. His face was tight, fists balled. You planned this, he hissed. You waited until you could humiliate us. I stepped closer, slowly.
No, Tyler.
I waited until I no longer needed revenge. This isn't about you anymore. Or Dad. Or your pathetic family dinners. I turned to the group behind me. This is about growth. About what happens when the people who were kicked out stop begging to be let back in and start building their own kingdom. Alex checked his watch. We have an appointment at the Northbridge boardroom in 20 minutes. Oh, don't worry, I said with a smirk. That's been moved here. My dad frowned. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone. Your office lease was under the old LLC. It expired at midnight. I own the holding company. Effective today, this house is the new HQ. Uncle Bill sputtered. You can't just. I already did. Jessica stood, face red. You're just trying to make us feel small. I raised a brow.
No, Jessica.
I'm just showing you how small you made yourselves by betting against me. We moved into the living room. My new team pulled out tablets. Contracts were reviewed. Calls were made. I watched as Dominic dialed in logistics with his CTO while Rachel handled onboarding for the new AI division we'd integrated. Meanwhile, my father sat on the edge of the leather couch, as if the house around him had begun to dissolve. This was my empire, he whispered. This was supposed to be Tyler's future. I looked at him one last time, straight in the eyes. You shouldn't have burned the bridge you thought I'd never have the power to rebuild. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because what I revealed next silenced them more than anything else could. You remember Carson Fields? I asked casually, scrolling on my phone. My father blinked.
What?
The auditor? You had him fired when he found some inconvenient records in the Northbridge books. Dad stiffened. Tyler went pale. I continued. Turns out Carson kept copies. And when I acquired Northbridge, I had full access to its archived financials. including the off-books account that wired quarterly consulting fees to a real estate shell company in Montana. Silence. Jessica whispered, "What are you talking about?" I dropped my phone on the coffee table. On screen was a PDF titled, Wire Transfer Logs, FI 2016 to FI 2022. I'm talking about the money Dad siphoned out of the company to buy properties under fake names. I'm talking about fraud. No. Dad stood quickly, panic flashing. You don't understand how corporate finance works. That was just tax evasion, embezzlement, and possibly money laundering, depending on how the offshore transfers check out. You wouldn't, he said, pointing at me, voice rising. You wouldn't ruin your own father's life. I stepped forward, slowly. You already ruined mine. When you stood up last night and told me I was a disgrace, you burned whatever was left. His jaw trembled, but he was too proud to beg. So I leaned in close, my voice low. But don't worry. I'm not turning you in.
Yet.
The files are with my lawyer, sealed unless something happens to me or this company. So, if you play nice, I'll let you walk away with your name still intact. The air left the room like someone had opened a vacuum. You knew, Tyler murmured, staring at Dad. You knew all of it and let me stand next to you like some heir to a crumbling fraud. My dad turned to him, reaching out. Son. Tyler slapped his hand away. But I wasn't focused on them anymore. I turned toward my mother. She hadn't said a word the entire time. Just sat there, jaw tight, eyes unmoving. Why didn't you ever say anything? I asked. You watched him mock me for years. Watched him belittle me. Punish me for thinking differently. She looked at me, expression blank. Because, she said finally, you were always the one who felt too much. You cried when your bike got scratched. You sulked when your paintings weren't hung on the fridge. I thought if you toughened up, you'd survive. You didn't raise me to survive, I said, tears suddenly burning behind my eyes. You raised me to stay quiet. My team stood silently behind me. And then Alex said, we need a decision, boss. You want to rebuild Northbridge clean? Or keep pretending it still has a family legacy? I looked around at the faces that once dictated my worth. Then I smiled. We'll rebuild. From zero. And we'll do it without a single brick laid by liars. My mom stood, for the first time, truly shaken. You'll cut us off. You cut me off a long time ago. She reached for me. Wait, can't we? But I turned to my team. We're done here. We walked out the door. All 6 of us. No yelling. No slamming. Just silence. Behind me, I heard the front door close. Slowly. Quietly. Outside, I looked at the house one more time. It wasn't home. It was history. And I was finally done carrying its weight. By the time we reached the convoy of black limousines again, the morning sun had pierced through the clouds. I could still feel their silence behind me, the weight of my father's collapsed authority, Tyler's crumbling image, my mother's frozen guilt. And yet, not one of them came running after me. They stayed in that house, trapped in the world they built on control, pride, and lies. I stepped into the back seat of the lead limo with Alex beside me, already typing away on his tablet. Dominic turned from the front passenger seat, eyes gleaming. Just say the word, and we'll pull every Northbridge legacy exec off payroll. Wipe the slate clean. I stared out the window.
No.
Keep a few. But I want loyalty audits on every VP.
Backgrounds.
Track records. And scrub anyone who ever treated a junior like garbage. Rachel chimed in. You're sending a message. I'm rewriting the culture, I said. We don't humiliate people for struggling. We don't laugh at risk takers. And we sure as hell don't let power feed on cruelty. The limo turned onto the freeway. My reflection in the glass window didn't look like the girl from last night. My chin was higher. My eyes sharper. There was no more waiting for validation. That afternoon, we held a press conference at the Grand Marlowe Hotel downtown. The media had already caught wind of a massive change at Northbridge. Rumors swirled. Whispers of hostile takeovers. Silent buyouts. What they didn't expect was a 30-year-old woman walking on stage in heels that echoed power, and a voice that didn't shake. I stepped up to the mic. My name is Camille Hart, and as of this morning, I am the majority shareholder and CEO of Northbridge Ventures. Cameras flashed. Gasps rippled through the room. For years, Northbridge profited off a culture of exclusion, ego, and elitism. Today, that ends. We are no longer a legacy-run dynasty. We are a vision-led future. A reporter raised a hand. Ms. Hart, how did this happen overnight? I smiled. It didn't. It took years of being underestimated. Another voice cut in. What about your family? Will they remain involved? I kept my tone even. They're welcome to rebuild their own reputations. But Northbridge is no longer a family business. After the press conference, I stepped out onto the hotel's balcony alone. The city below moved like a living pulse, horns, footsteps, engines, voices. Alex joined me with 2 glasses of champagne. They'll talk about that speech for weeks. I don't want speeches, I murmured. I want impact. You're already making it. I turned to him. You saw what happened last night. That dinner, it broke something in me, but not in the way they expected. I know, he said. You stood up from that table and never looked back. We toasted. Later that night, I opened my email inbox. Hundreds of messages. Some congratulatory, some jealous. A few from former teachers and distant relatives now crawling out of shadows. But one email stopped me cold. Subject: I owe you an apology. It was from my dad. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I shut the laptop and looked out my penthouse window. They had watched me fall for years. And now, they would have to live with the fact that I'd risen higher than they ever believed possible, not in spite of them, but because I'd finally stopped needing them. The next morning, I walked into the new Northbridge office, top floor of the Marlowe Tower.
Clean space.
New logo. No trace of my father. I passed the open workstations where young engineers and marketing interns glanced up with quiet respect. No more gatekeepers in suits. Just people who believed in rebuilding something real. Alex met me at the elevator. Board approved the restructuring. You're officially CEO without challenge. Good, I said. Let's make it worth it. That afternoon, I finally opened Dad's email.
Camille.
I know I've said a lot of things I can't take back, but I never thought you'd turn into someone this powerful. Maybe I was wrong about you. Or maybe I just didn't want to be outshined. Dad. I stared at it, then hit delete. That night, I drove back to the old neighborhood. Not to visit, just to pass through. As I stopped at the red light outside my childhood home, I saw them. My parents sitting on the porch. No limos. No guests. No smiles. Just silence. They looked up as my car idled. We made eye contact. No words. Just one long, quiet stare. Them watching what they lost. And me realizing I didn't need anything from them anymore. I turned the corner and drove into the future they said I'd never have.